Jason Wells here with MLM Complete Package, and I received a question from someone who follows our training, and they said to me, they asked, do I explain my MLM compensation plan? And this is a very interesting question. I'm glad the person asked this because intuitively they must realize that when they're explaining the compensation plan, things aren't going so well. And my answer typically to my own downline or anyone that I'm coaching outside my company is, unless the prospect specifically asks a question about the compensation plans because they clearly have MLM experience, I would say absolutely not. Now, I found building in Asia that a lot of the cultures over there are pretty savvy and aware of MLM compensation plans. So that might be the only exception where you're going to explain the compensation plan because it's very important to them. But I found elsewhere that most of the time prospects aren't asking about the MLM comp plan of your company. They're basically asking questions like, how does this work? Or how do I make money? Or what am I going to be doing? Now, the what am I going to be doing typically keeps people from discussing the MLM comp plan. And I find people have a really hard time generally in the industry answering the question, what am I going to be doing? But how to make money, like everyone knows how to explain that because they explain their compensation plan. The problem is, how do I make money? It's basically the same as what am I going to be doing? And I think a lot of people in the MLM community don't understand that, even big time leaders. Although I have a theory on that I'll talk about later. Now, as I said, this question is answered by some of the top MLM leaders by showing the comp plan. And obviously, if people have been doing MLM for years, they've had success. Obviously, they have their reasons for doing it, and they appear to be successful at it. But understand when you start explaining your MLM comp plan, and really what I hear reported from my downline and what I found when I was new to MLM is that one of two things happens. Either the prospect's eyes glaze over and they look lost, and you know as well as I do, a lost prospect isn't a buying prospect. If you've done any type of prospecting, you should know what I'm talking about. Or you get a million other questions that lead you down a deep, deep hole that you never will get out of, and you'll never get to closing your prospect because you'll be on this endless technical question answering spree that the prospect throws at you because of the comp plan, because most comp plans are complex. Doesn't matter how simple your company tries to make it out to be, to the prospect, it's complex. So how do I make money? That's the question. Well, what they're wondering is, what am I going to be doing? Because, at my job or business, I am paid to do specific activities. And so I want to know what specific training, what daily activities I'll be doing, what are the things that I'm going to be doing on a daily basis to make money. They want to know what the business opportunity is about, and ultimately what the prospect's conclusion is going to be based on what you say is, if they feel they can do it, they're probably going to join your business. They don't feel they can do it, they won't. And typically that's masked in many other objections, but I can go in. This is a whole nother discussion on objection handling. But the point is, they want to know what they're going to be doing. How do I make money? So that leads me to my theory on why MLM leaders often jump into the MLM compensation plan of their company. And again, I don't know this for sure because it's not something that I do, but I often wonder, why do leaders do it? And my theory is, I think it's a diversionary question. I think a lot of leaders don't even know what they're doing, but I think originally when this question was asked, and people answered it with actually the daily activities they're going to be doing, which people didn't like to hear. My theory is people started answering this question by kind of giving an answer, but not really an answer, which is showing the comp plan. And when most organizations in MLM build around recruit as many as you can and retain as many as possible, then you really don't have anything to explain. Yet, if you talk about some of the things that we talk about in the Complete Networker on the MLM Complete Package website, we talk about the common sense way of building MLM in that course. And it's basically a culmination of everything that Chris and I have learned over the years building our own MLM business. And if you have a solid discussion on what it is to build MLM, what the training is going to be for the person, how they're going to get customers, how they're going to add people to their team and train them how to get customers, and how the whole group working together is going to build a big customer base that will ultimately benefit them. And the idea is when you have all those customers, people will be ordering product over and over and over again on work that you did days, weeks, months, even years ago, because you sold that customer, they're buying the product, and they continue to buy the product. So you're getting paid on efforts that you did a long time ago in some cases. I have customers that are still buying the product after 10 years in my company. It's amazing. But if you've got a good product or service, that can happen. And that's where the residual component comes from, as well as the leverage that you get off your downline. But the point is, if you don't teach people how to build a business, if it's really just kind of luck where you're throwing people in your organization, you're great at recruiting, and you're throwing people down there, your downline, which maybe you're one of those people, you're in somebody's downline that's like that, they're just great at recruiting. They know what to say. But how are you going to build this? That's the question. Like when somebody asks you, how do you make money? And you really don't have a response on what training they're going to do, what they're actually going to be doing, or what you've been taught doesn't seem to be working, or you're taught to discuss the compensation plan when somebody says, how do I make money? And you always seem to blow up the conversation or it never goes anywhere. It's because that person can see that you really don't know what you're doing, or they feel lost in what they're going to be doing. And a lost prospect is not going to join your business. So, what do? Well, as I said, you get up to speed on what you really should be doing in MLM, building a common sense style MLM business like our Complete Networker course. You at least give the prospect a feeling that you know what you're doing and you know how the business works, even if you don't. Now, don't worry. All of our other courses cover how to generate leads, communication training, how to get customers, how to get distributors with the people that you know, how to train your downline, how to goal set, all the things that you would ever need to know, all of that stuff is there. The how of building is all there. It's stuff we use. But what you have to start with is when you're recruiting people, sponsoring people, whatever you call it in your MLM company, the thing is you need to be able to explain how the business works. And maybe you don't know how the business works or how it should work. So that's what our Complete Networker course is all about. And I don't want to make it a pitch about that, but the reality is the Complete Networker really covers 10 years of what we've learned, and it's really our general overview on how things work. And so if things aren't going well for you in your MLM business, or you're kind of lost on how to explain how to make money because you really don't know how to make money, then that's probably where you need to start. So any comments or questions, you know where to do it. You can do it on our YouTube channel page You can post questions on our blog. We'll be happy to answer them. If you have any clarifying questions on this or any other questions, feel free to do so. Study this. Make sure you understand this. If there's something you don't understand, ask, because trust me, if you can't answer this question or you don't know what to say to prospects when you get in this area and you start complaining or explaining the comp plan, you're going to have a lot of problems and things aren't going to move forward for you. And you're just going to think the business doesn't work when it does.